Good
Good morning, everyone. Today we are going to have Ray Bray talking to us about his favourite poetry, or at least poetry which he thinks is great fun. And so over to you, please, Ray. Thank you.
Everyone's I have stuff from different people of different periods, and one which I thought, because of things in the news, I'd read first is something by Michael Rosen, and it says, and it's called Newcomers. My father came to England from another country. My father's mother came to England from another country, but my father's father stayed behind. So my dad had no dad here, and I never saw him at all. One day in spring, some things arrived. A few old papers, a few old photographs, and oh yes, a hulky, bulky, thick check jacket that belonged to a man I would have called Grandad, the man who stayed behind. But I kept the jacket. I wore it, and I wore it, and I wore it, till it was worn right through at the back. Isn't that? Yeah, I think that was something to think about. But in a lighter mood, Roger McGuff.
Sorry, could I just ask, could you tell us the name of the poet again, please, Ray?
The last poem.
Yes.
Was a man called Michael Rosen.
Rosen. Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Roger McGuff. Tantrums. When my sister starts to frown, I'm always on my guard. Yesterday, she threw a tantrum, but it missed me by a yard. Spike Milligan. My sister Laura's bigger than me. She lifts me up quite easily. I can't lift her. I've tried and tried. I think she must have something heavy inside. Ho, ho, ho. And again, one of my favorite poets, who is Mr. As I said, Roger McGuff, or Roger McGruff, as he's sometimes called. Here I am, 47 years old, and I've never gone to work in ladies' underwear. Never ran naked in night in the rain. Never made love to a girl I've just met on a plane. At that awkward age, now between birth and death, I think of all the outrages unperturbed, opportunities missed, the dragons unchased, the maidens unkissed, the wine still left untasted, the oceans uncrossed, the fantasies wasted, the mad urges lost. Here I am, getting on for 70, and never had to step outside for a fight. Crossed on yellow and red, pissed on rose or white. Pretty dull for a poet, I suppose. Quite. Good old William. I concur with everything you say, smiled William. Oh yes, I concur with that. I agree. If there's a general feeling, you can count on me. Can't say fairer. Good old William the Conqueror. Ho, 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 ho. It's my type of poem because of the slight silliness at the end, which, as many of you will know, I say these things and people go. My jokes sometimes, a lot of the time, when I'm with my family, especially with my brother, I start to tell a joke and he will look at me and point his finger at me and say, no. Oh dear. This one is a little more interesting. It is still Roger McGough from his book, Melting into the Foreground, which I thought was a good title for a book. That's in there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
People will recognize Roger McGough as one of the 60s poets, along with Adrian Henry and among others. On the road. Getting on at Notting Hill, a bag lady, more or less, big, sad and grey. Late 30s, I'd guess. Change at Euston for the Marrakesh Express. Elastic band bangles, sandal length dress, layer upon layer of embroidered tat, smoked black mirrors, large flat hat. A mucky pup, Afghan hound, in hippie best, Morocco bound. With Crosby, Stills and Nash and Hope, L'Amour. Whatever happened to L'Amour? Cool black eyes downcast, fluttering now and then, as men who fastly avert their gaze. Neil Young, where art thou now? Donovan, T-Rex, those essential sexual days, sweet nights of sex. She puffs hard her cigarette, lets loose the ash, dreams about L'Amour and Crosby, Graham and Nash. Those are the days which we can remember, I guess, because we are of those of us who are the same age, sometimes the same age as myself, you know, of the hippie days, of the dreams of perhaps we could have wandered off to the hippie trail to wherever. But sometimes I think of that, and sometimes I think, we now come to another of my really favorite authors, poets. They've just released a new book of his poetry, and I thought it's a good way to actually read some of his poetry, because I think he is jolly good, and that's him. I like Giles Cordsley. He's one of those who has been following me around all my life, I think, and some of his poems are sad and dark, but some of them are joyful and the things about life. This is one which, because I dislike guns at all of any shape, form whatsoever, and it's called I Saw a Jolly Hunter. I saw a jolly hunter with a jolly gun, walking in the countryside in the jolly sun. In the jolly meadow sat a jolly hare. Saw jolly hunter, took jolly care. Hunter jolly eager, sight of jolly prey, forgot gun pointed, wrong jolly way. Jolly hunters, jolly head, over the hills gone. Jolly old safety catch, not jolly on. Bang went jolly gun, hunter jolly dead. Jolly hair got clean away. Jolly good, I said. This one is a little longer, but I think you'll enjoy it nonetheless, because
who was the author again, Ray?
it is Charles Causley. He wrote this one, and it was broadcast on radio for quite a long time because of its to do with hospitals. And as we grow older, we're inclined to be hospitalized at least once or twice. And if we're unlucky, we're there for a little while. And Causley was in hospital for quite a little while. And like most poets, he observed things going around in the hospital. And this is from one of his observations. And it's called The 10 Types of Hospital Visitor. The first enters wearing neon armor of virtue, carelessly firing all-purpose smiles at everyone present. She destroys hope in the breast of the sick, who realize instantly that they are capable of surmounting her ferocious goodwill. Such courage she displays in the face of human disaster. Fortunately, she doesn't stay long. After a speedy trip around the ward, in the manner of a 1930s destroyer, showing the flag of the Mediterranean, she returns home for the week. With luck, longer, scorched by the heat of her own worthiness. The second appears in a melancholic splurge of theological colour, taps heavily above like a healthy vulture, disturbing deep frozen hope. The patients gaze at him cautiously, most of them as yet uncertain of the realities of heaven, hellfire, or eternal emptiness. Pay for safety by accepting his attentions with just about concealed apathy, except one old man who cries with newfound sharpened hatred, "Shove off, shove off, shove off, just go." The third skillfully deflates his weakly smiling victim by telling him how the lobelias are doing, how many kittens the cat's had, how the slate came off the scullery roof, and how no one has visited a patient for a fortnight because everybody had colds and feared to bring a jumping germ into the hospital. The patient's eyes ice over. He's uninterested in lobelias, the cat, the slate, the germ. Flat on his back, drip fed, his face the shade of a newly dug up pharaoh, whereas his skeleton outside his skin, yet his wits are as bright as a light flame. He is concerned only with the here and now, and requires to speak of nothing but his present predicament. He is not permitted. The fourth attempt to cheer his aging mother with light jokes, menacing as shell splinters. "The thing you have you jumping around like a gazelle," he says, "playing in the football team." Quite undeterred by the sight of kilos of plaster, chains, lifting gear, a pair of lethally designed crutches. "You'll be leapfrogging soon," he says, "swing 10 lengths of the bars." At those unlikely prophecies, the old lady stares fearfully at her sick offspring, thinking he has lost his reason, which alas seems to be the case. The fifth, a giant from the fields with suits smelling of milk and hay, shifts uneasy from one bullock foot to the other, as though to avoid settling permanently in an aesthetic landscape. Occasionally he loses a scared glance sideways, as though fear of what intimacy he may blunder on, or the walls might suddenly close in on him. He carries flowers, held lightly in fingers, the size and shape of plantains. Tenderly kisses his wife's cheeks, the brush of a child's lips, then balances motionally for 30 minutes on a thin chair. At the end of visiting time, he emerges breathless, blinking with relief into a safe light. He does not appear to notice the dusk. The sixth visitor says little, breathes reassurances, smiles securely, carries no black passport of grapes and vista of chocolate. He has a clutch of clean washing. Unobtrusively stows it in the locker, searching out more, talking quietly to the sister. Out of shot, out of earshot, out of sight of the patient. Arrives punctiliously as the tide. Does not stay the whole hour. Even when she's gone, the patient seems to sense her there and uphold him presence. The seventh visitor smells of bathroom aftershave, often finds his friend sound asleep, whether real or feigned. He never determines. He doesn't mind. Prowls the ward in search of second-class lost-face patients with no visitors, and who are pretending to doze or read paperbacks. He probes relentlessly the nature of each complaint and is swift with such dilutions of confidence as, "Ah, you'll be worse before you're better." 5 minutes before the bell punctuates visiting time with his friend, and visiting time. His friend opens alarm clock eye. The visitor checks his watch. Market day. The duck and pheasant will still be open. Courage must be refueled. The eighth visitor looks infinitely more decayed, ill and infirm than the patient. His face is expensively grey. he peers about with antediluvian eyes, as though from the other end of time. He appears to have risen from the grave to make his appearance. There's a whiff of white flowers about him. The crumpled look of a slightly used shroud. Slowly he passes a patient a bag of bulletproof homemade biscuits, a strong death-dealing cake to have with your tea, or a bowl of fruit so weighty it threatens to break his glass fingers. The patient, encouraged beyond measure, thanks him with enthusiasm, not for the oranges, the biscuits, the cake, but for the healing sight of someone patently worse than himself. He rounds the crisis corner and begins a recovery. The 9th visitor is life. The 10th visitor is not usually named. A little long, but I think you'll find interesting.
So that was Charles.
That was Charles Cordsley.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
As you could see, one of my favourite poets of these days, you know, because I'm probably into more of the 20th century poets than the years that go back and back and back and back. But I think that's his personal taste. But as I usually say, I've been gambling through them. And so we come on now to more of a modern poet. This poet I was told about and said, he's coming to Bristol. Go and see him, he's rather good. He's a very modern poet, and he was publishing his new book. So I thought, yeah, why not? Give him a go. Never heard of him. It's called Felix Dennis. And he wrote in his book, which I am very pleased he signed for me, was called When Jack Sued Jill. Nursery Rhymes for Modern Times. And this is it. As you can see, it looks jolly different. And these are a few which should make you smile. There was a crooked man, it was called. And quotes underneath is the Enrong song. There was a crooked man, and he had a crooked smile. He brought a crooked company to make a crooked pile. He bribed a crooked crony to form a crooked board, and all their regulations were crookedly ignored. He paid a crooked banker to rig a crooked sail, and they all lived together in a crooked little jail. Now that is kind of that is Felix Dennis's kind of style, you know, of the modern day person, and he thinks about these type of things and says things. This one is Georgie Porgy, and again it's a little silly, but it does have a good point. Georgie Porgy, Puddin' and Pie kissed the girls and made them cry. When the teacher heard what he'd done, She made him put a condom on. Georgie Porgy, bully and clown. His hands are damp. His nose is brown. He scraped through university. And now he's Georgie P. MP. Hey, diddle diddle. Hey, diddle diddle. I punctured my middle and stapled a ring to my nose. My thingamy lips are pierced at the tips, and I jingle wherever I go. Very silly, but you know, I like it.
Yeah.
Jack and Jill. Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. Jack fell down and broke his crown, and Jill came tumbling after. Jill sued Jack, and Jack sued back. The judge is going to fine her. Now the pail has been sent to jail for abandoning a minor. We sue Jack, and he sues Jill. The hill is sued for a scandal. The water says he'll sue the press, and everyone sues the handle. Different, you know, kind of law is law and all sorts of things like that, you know. I just noticed we seem to have lost Hattie.
Yeah, she was here. She was here.
Yeah. Right. This one is the bane of most people's life. It is called White Van Man, to the rhythm of Old King Cole. White Van Man has a very white van, and a very white van has he, except for the dents and the rust and the vents and a very rude graffiti. He drives his van as fast as he can, and he's neither heard nor seen. He clings to his phone like a dog to a bone, and he steers with one of his knees. He picks his nose while the tailback grows, and yaks to his front seat crew. But a fool such a rush as a haunt and a flash will receive the fingers too. Oh, White Van Man has a very wide clan who profess no highway code. They shunt your ear and yell in your ear as they U-turn in the middle of the road. He stamps on his brakes when he overtakes as he cuts up you and me. For White Van Man is a very white van, and a very white van be he. Very silly.
Nice.
I didn't know whether I should do this one, but I quite liked it because it's very silly. Mary had a little lamb. Mary had a little lamb, his foot was black as soot, and into Mary's bread and jam the sooty foot he put. Mary grabbed the little lamb and poured herself a lager. If you do that again, she said, I'll pop you in the Arga. And the last one from Felix is Rub-a-dub-dub. Rub-a-dub-dub, 8 men in a club. They gathered from over the sea. They talk of free trade and the progress they've made, though free trade has never been quite free. Rub-a-dub-dub, and here is the nub. Your leaders may waffle and jaw, but good stay protected to keep them elected and we stay as poor as before. Rub-a-dub-dub, you men in your club whose speeches are crafted with care, if aid merely caters to rotten dictators, they spare us at least the hot air. And if you like, these poems in the new form, then I would recommend this book to you, because it is very funny. It's very appetite of what is going on today. Right. I have a few left, which I don't think I'm going to get to 12 o'clock by having read them all. So a few comments would be appreciated after I've finished. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Right. Someone who has given me great joy over the last years has been the eponymous Wendy Cope, who I like and have liked. This one is called Another Unfortunate Choice. I think I'm in love with A.E. Houseman, which puts me in a worse than usual fix. No woman ever stood a chance with Houseman, and he's been dead since 1936. Yeah. And three more from her in this book. An unusual cat poem. My cat is dead, but I've decided not to make a big tragedy out of it. Ba-dum, as the phrase goes. And one I couldn't resist about Christmas, because it says a lot about it to me. At Christmas, little children sing and merry bells do jingle. The cold winter air makes your hands and faces tingle, and happy families go to church. Cheerily they mingle, and the whole business is unbelievably dreadful if you're single. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. I agree with that. Right. Kindness to animals. If I went vegetarian and didn't eat lamb for dinner, I think I'd be a better person and also thinner. But the lamb is not endangered, and at least I can truthfully say I have never, ever eaten a barn owl. So perhaps I'm okay. Very silly. One of interest, which I think Wendy Cope does do the silly poetry a lot of the time, but this one I think has real resonance, and I read it a few times and thought, yeah, I'll include this one. It's called Names. She was Eliza for a few weeks when she was a baby. Eliza Lily, soon to be called Little. Later, she was Miss Stewart, at the baker's shop, and then, my love, me darling, mother.
I think your screen's frozen, Ray. We can't hear you, and you're not moving at all.
I was trying to work out what had happened. Can you hear us, Ray?
He's gone away. He'll come back in a minute, I think.
Okay. Did anyone bring a poem that they were hoping to read? Because if so, this could be your opportunity while we wait for Ray to come back. David.
I can do one quickly. Ray seemed to like Roger McGough a lot. And there's one called Conservative Government Employment Figures. Sorry, Conservative Government Unemployment Figures. And it goes like this.
I was, hello, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm just filling in, Ray, but it's a quick one. It won't take a moment. It's from Roger McGough, your favorite, and it's his poem called Conservative Government Unemployment Figures. And it goes, Conservative Government Unemployment Figures.
Oh, yeah.
Like it.
Yeah.
Yes. Sorry for that interruption. My computer suddenly had a hiccup and threw me off. No, McGough, good man.
Yeah, very funny.
Right. Only a couple more left. Wendy Cope, love story. I thought you were a pushover. I hoped I wouldn't hurt you. I warned you this was just a fling, and one day I'd desert you. So kindly in your spectacles, so solid in your jacket, so manly in your big white car. It must have cost a packet. I grew to like you more and more. I didn't try to hide it. Falling in love with someone nice, I'd hardly ever tried it. The course of true love don't run quite the way I planned it. You failed to fall in love with me. I couldn't understand it. And the last one is by what I called anonymous. And you have to try and figure out who wrote it. They met in a youth club entry under the evening star. He was the man with the medals. She was from Cheltenham Spa. He said he could offer her an honour. She said it would cost her her good name. She entered the work to give service, not to gain fortune or fame. He said it would be a recognition of the many young thugs she had saved. She would join the list of the mighty. She said she'd rather be paid. The man from the gongs list went quiet. The government had brought in a new age with honours and ribbons for troopers, but only the minimum wage. She sighed as she turned down his offer. She said she'd just rather not be classified with the high and the mighty. Such status didn't mean a lot. Who wrote that? Any guesses?
You?
You'll have to tell us. Oh, it's you.
Oh,
Yeah,
well done.
great.
Congratulations.
In my many years ago, when I was asked to write something, and it took me what 2 or 3 months before I decided it was all right to actually tell others about. So anyway, that is me. So my poetry is to an end. So my friends, what do you think? What do you think? Or have you any questions?
How many books of poetry have you got, Ray?
About 40
Yep, that's what I thought.
of different things. People like John Betjeman and, as I say, Charles Causley, Wendy Cope, and many others, and books with a compilation of people. I got one book for just one poem in it, which was a delightful poem called "The Darkling Thrush." I don't know if people have heard of that, but it's an absolutely lovely poem, and don't ask me to find it because it's in the thingy over there, and it will take me about 10 minutes, I suppose, to find it at that time. But yes, it's poems have always given me great joy in the time, because they are nearly frozen meaning in so many words, because you can't have too many words in a poem. You have to kind of keep whittling it down until you get the right thing. Like Charles Causley in the People Who Go to Visit People in the Hospital. I can't imagine how long it took him to write all that. It must have been quite an effort. But I think you would say that it was worth reading, because it's because we've all met those type of people in hospitals who come in and visit people. You go.
Oh, they were so well observed, really amazing.
Yeah. One of the things I really enjoy about poetry in general is, although I don't read it that often, my collection is smaller than yours, but I find it very satisfying to look at it. And although what I'm actually remembering is only scraps of the different kinds of poetry I've got, I still get this sense of richness from it. I can't explain it. It's something between actual and spiritual, really. It gives me a feeling of I don't know, being part of a much greater and grander and more fascinating world, without necessarily picking up the books themselves and reading them. But it's weird.
Yeah, because they can be kind of very large or very short and pithy type of thing, like Ogden Nash. Candy is dandy, but liquor is quicker. Or the parent. Children aren't happy with nothing to ignore. That's what parents are for. You get that type of thing, but the longer poems which go.
I like. I mean, as a child, my mother occasionally read me long poems that she'd had read to her as a girl, and so they're quite old, But we're looking at Victorian poetry, but the kind with the sort of the rhythm to it, which I know is totally out of fashion, but it gave me a real love of poetry, and it turned me towards poetry even when I learned later on to call that a bit unsophisticated, or but I still love it. It's perhaps again it's a feeling of safety and the things that used to be part of your safety net. I don't know, but yeah, the things about highwaymen and old indoors. Knocking. The highwayman came knocking at the old indoors. Yeah, makes me shiver.
That
It's
is kind of a picture of
yeah.
sort of going on type of thing, kind of watch the ball, my darling, by the taxman. No, by the phone goes by. Yeah.
Still, I really enjoyed that, Ray. Thank you. I don't know. Don't know if anybody else want to say something. I've been holding the floor a bit. Sorry.
Yes.
Yes, I appreciate. I think I had a short nap in the middle, but have you come across Andrew Neil Blewett?
Yeah.
As a poem? They published 2 volumes of his verse since he's died. One was called A Millipede with Gout, and the other one's Dragonflies Have a Problem. Now, a lot of his are quite short. One of the ones that I quite like, which I've re-entitled, Should Have Gone to Barnard's Castle. And it's just, the poem goes, I think we must have left the town. I'm knocking fewer people down. And this one's called Brief Encounter, Black Widow Spider. He dates with her, she meets him, he mates with her, she eats him. And there's, this one's called If, it's slightly longer. If you've been in the lair of a sore-headed bear and studied kung fu and karate, if you've struggled for life with a cannibal's wife and you've been to an acid house party, if you've lived through the Blitz, clung on to your wits and you've undergone SAS training, if you've been at Heathrow in a strike or go slow and you've gone on your way uncomplaining, if you've fought in the war, faced the Africa Corps and outwitted Sardinian banditti, if you strummed it at rugger and mastered a mugger, then you're fit for the sales in the city.
Yep.
Oh, that's really good.
Yeah, I think, it's again, he's very, I think what I like about the Mr. Turning for the Optician one is the fact that he uses the word fewer, which doesn't get used as much as it ought to be.
Now back.
Yeah.
Now, not this moment in time.
Yeah. Here's another little one. Guardian Angels, as we're a religious organization. Matthew and Mark, Luke and John, guard the bed that I lay on. But while I'm having it away, you needn't feel obliged to stay.
Put them.
Anyway, now I discovered him. Well, I think I picked up the first one in a charity shop a few years ago, and the second one was published, and I bought it during lockdown for more than I wanted to pay for it. But he does provide me with hours of just gentle entertainment. His kind of clever use of words. So anyway, yeah.
Right then, friends. Well, we seem to have come to a bit of a more.
Jenny, I think Jenny had her hand up actually.
No,
Jenny.
I was looking at these.
The slides.
Oh.
I suddenly noticed them.
Well, should I thank Ray for a wonderfully entertaining morning. And
Round of
And,
applause.
thank David for recording this for posterity.
But before that, next week, we have the coming to an end. It says,
No.
Jenny Smith, the end and a beginning.
Yes.
The end is nigh.
Intriguing, Jenny.
Well, it was a turning point in my life. Wasn't planned.
They're good friends.
Do Patsy, Ray and I need to stay online together?
Okay, well, we'll leave you to it.
Right, okay.
Okay.